as I got towards mile 8, I took 2 huge kind of gasps of air and I collapsed just like out of the blue. Healthy guy, 25 years old, 3 months away from his wedding day, kind of like this, storybook horror movie type of situation.
This is the More Than Capable podcast. Life applies pressure in predictable places, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. More Than Capable exists for those who choose to prepare. No hacks, no shortcuts, no posturing. Just discipline, faith, and practices that help you stand when life presses down. Welcome. I am glad you are here. You are vetted by one of my and my wife's closest and dearest friends as a couple. So when they passed along your name, I was extremely excited, even before digging into your background. These are people that I very much look up to, and they spoke incredibly highly of you. But I did ask them, I was like, are there any little nuggets that would be interesting or put a smile on Tyler's face? And I wasn't even thinking about it in terms of maybe kicking this off. And I have no idea how this is going to go. But I'm very curious to hear about your lunchtime routine and habits and kind of the MO of Tyler Moon at work. So if that primes you on anything, we'll open it up there.
Oh, okay. Wow, this is a good start. So,
Love it.
so I work at a great company, a big company in the Twin Cities in the packaged food industry. And throughout the work week and different days of the week, people will have lunch catered into them. So our on-site catering will make them lunch, and they do a great job. And one time, I don't know, maybe about 12 months ago, I was walking around the campus about 1 o'clock, and I just noticed that there was all this food sitting out. And just being who I am, I was like, man, what are they gonna do with all that food? And my background isn't kind of food service. And I was like, well, they'll probably just throw it all away. And that's just heartbreaking to me as someone who's maybe fiscally conservative and also a former food service guy. So I said, I wonder what happened if I just like had some for lunch. What if I went up there and just took some? Like, would people even care? And because generally speaking, usually sometimes people will like bring caterings to like larger team rooms later, or they'll drop them off at kind of the break room or something. And so I kind of investigated it for a while, and I was like looking like, okay, what if I don't bring my lunch today? Like, what's going to happen? So about 1 o'clock, I started walking around the floors, and I was getting success rates of like 60, 70, 80% of the time. I'm walking out with like a full burrito, like buffet at 1:15 every day, from various caterings and stuff like that. So I kind of get titled as the scavenger at work, and people have given me a pretty hard time about it. But when I walk back with a free lunch, they kind of shake their head and they go, "Oh, I can't believe that worked again." And I'm like, I'm not hiding it. It's not a joke. It's not a lie. I'm just saying, I'll just walk around at 1 o'clock, and it's created some unique conversations over the past 6 to 12 months for sure.
I love it. I love it. What a beautiful story. And working for a large corporation myself, granted not on site. I'm definitely familiar with the over ordering, although pockets seem to be getting tight. And the last couple of work events I've been at, it's like, oh, you actually do kind of have to temper yourself with what you put on your plate. But no, you know what? That was passed along to me, and you hit on a couple things. So that was passed along to me with the caveat that, yeah, this is kind of like a funny behavior. He gets some jabs, but it really actually does speak to him as a person, and how value based that he is. And so yeah, I think it's really really telling. And I'm kind of curious. I want to get into what happened at mile marker 8. So maybe I'll just kick off there, and then really want to talk about how that experience has changed you and what you've done with it.
Yeah, for sure. So I like to tell folks that I am just the most ordinary suburban dad that you could picture. Like the guy in the New Balances mowing the yard in cargo shorts. Like that's me. I'm that Progressive commercial or whatever insurance commercial you can think of. That's kind of me. and not in a bad way, but just like how I grew up and who I am as a person. And I entered that kind of regular, normal, ordinary guy state on October 6th, 2019, as I stepped at the starting line of the Twin Cities 10-mile race. So in Minnesota, there's a couple exciting things that happen here. And one of those things is the Twin Cities Marathon and the Twin Cities 10 Mile, which is always the first weekend in October. And it's kind of the best time for running here in Minneapolis because it's warm enough to be bearable, but really cool. So you get a nice time. And so on that given day, I laced up my shoes like any other runner and casual runner and started off on the race. And tens of thousands of other runners and I headed off, and things were going really well. So kind of started the race in downtown Minneapolis, and you make your way all the way to downtown St. Paul. And for me, kind of the long story made short is that I never made it to the finish line that day. I don't have much memory of the day, so a lot of this is what I share with folks is things I've pieced together and things that have been told to me over time. But as I got towards mile 8, I took two huge kind of gasps of air and I collapsed, just like out of the blue. Healthy guy, 25 years old, 3 months away from his wedding day, kind of like this, storybook horror movie type of situation. And I just collapsed very awkwardly, randomly. I didn't trip over anything. It was in the middle of the street. And people quickly realized that something was very wrong with me. So they came, other runners, there were some race volunteers, even some spectators who were at the race, quickly came, flipped me over, and to make it short, just gave me CPR for 10 to 15 minutes, kind of like what you would see on Grey's Anatomy or some of these TV shows, like this really intense, physically, emotionally intense moment. And these people worked together as strangers and kept me alive for about 10 minutes until an AED arrived on the scene, shocked my heart back into rhythm, and rushed me off to the hospital. So I kind of started off as this ordinary suburban guy and ended the day as this mystery man. And then, as we'll talk about later, kind of revealed more about my story, more about who I was, and then use it as a platform to share a bigger message.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I was in particular interested in the memory aspect. So you referenced not having a lot from the day. Is it like like if you really stretch back, and I'm sure you've spent a ton of time thinking on it, and our minds are weird how they might fill in stories based on how other people are saying, but is it like a hard cutoff for you where it's like, boy, this time on, just nothing?
Great question. So, yes, I have a hard cut after mile 1, and I don't have
Wow.
anything else after. So, and I don't even know. So for me, mile 1, when you start in downtown, I have vivid memories of standing downtown and looking at, the Viking stadiums in the background and all these skyscrapers. And I have kind of these vivid memories of running downtown as the sun is rising, it's glistening off of the skyscrapers, kind of one of those unique experiences. And then right as I got around mile 1, I saw my family. So my wife was there, or my fiance, and then my parents. And I don't know if that memory just cemented in my head and there was nothing that was going to take that memory away,
Yeah.
but that's the last memory I have, is seeing them. And then I have some very fuzzy in and out things of being in the hospital. But it really took me kind of like 3 full days to be like almost become conscious again. And granted, I was awake for two of those days, and I was cracking jokes and being Mr. Funny and very
But no memory.
emotional and all that stuff. But yeah, no memory of it. And so I don't know if it's just as a believer, I don't know if God's protecting me, plus maybe obviously having a concussion. And then I was in a medically induced coma afterwards. So I'm sure there's some medical explanations as well as to why I don't have it. But I really do hold on to that one memory with my family. And who knows, maybe I'll see more over time, or if I run it more times in the future, I'll kind of get some things back in the
Yeah.
memory. But
Yeah.
so far, that's the one that I have, and I'm thankful for it.
Wow. And was there an actual exchange with your family, or was it you on the course, seeing them in the crowd, and just like a wave or acknowledgement or something like that?
Yeah, so I was running, it's kind of in downtown Minneapolis, took a right turn, and then you're about to take a left turn. And as I'm turning left, I see them out of the corner of my eye, and I run across the street, give them a hug, give my wife a kiss on the cheek, and hit the road. So,
Wow.
and I have video of it too, so I think that might also help me. I have video
Hmm.
from their point of view. And that's one that I often kind of bring up is like, oh man, you never really know what's coming ahead of you. You never really know what's happening, 7 miles later in your life,
Right.
metaphorically speaking. Upright, happy, smiling, healthy, and then to think in less than an hour, I was face down, losing breath, losing heartbeat, and on the edge of life or death.
Now, when did your family, I'm assuming your family wasn't standing there at mile 8. I'm wondering what their experience is like or was like and what they've told you. How did they find out? When did they get to you? Like, how did you all kind of come back together and how did they enter back into the scene?
Yeah, great question. So as I'm doing kind of my things happening at mile 8, I had just seen my family at mile 7. So, when you do
Wow.
these races, you typically say, hey, let's meet here, let's meet
Yep.
there. And you kind of have a marked out plan because as a runner, you're not checking your phone. You're not going to tell people where you are. And with the technology, usually you can track your runners. So you can say, oh, let's meet him at this block. Or if we cut across this road, we can see him twice here or whatever it is. So we had one of those plans. And the plan was to see them at mile 7 and then again at mile 10. So we kind of did every 3 miles or so. We kind of had this thing set up. So I saw at mile 7, and as they were heading down to the finish line at mile 10, which is tens of thousands of people, chaotic,
Mhm.
traffic everywhere, they're trying to figure out where they are. I'm collapsed and almost dying. So they have no idea about it. They're living life on their own, doing their own thing, and then for some reason, I don't know what the tracker, some situation was happening where it actually showed that I was getting close to the finish line and had finished. Something about it was messed up. So my wife was really um, expecting to see me. She was like, "Well, the tracker says he's here, but I'm calling him and he won't answer and he won't answer and he won't answer." And then she gets a call from an unmarked number, like a *69 type number. And she's like, "Well, this is weird." And for some reason, she answers it, which she typically wouldn't. But I think just because of the situation she was in, she felt the nudge to answer her phone. And then there was a police officer from the St. Paul Police Department saying, "Hey, something happens to Tyler, and I can't tell you about it specifically because of HIPAA, but I know he's in the hospital, and I'm going to pick you up at the state capitol." So the state capitol is where the race finishes. So they go up the state capitol steps, meet the police officer, and they ride to the hospital. So they're kind of in this state of what happened, and my family is usually more laid back. So I think they're kind of thinking, maybe he twisted his ankle, or maybe he broke his leg, or concussion. Like I think they even maybe cracked a few jokes about it, or something like that, because they had no idea, no idea.
Yeah. The
Uh,
officer didn't divulge any information.
no, no, no. So I think that's protocol, which we appreciated her
Right. Yeah.
following. But they got to the hospital and kind of like a bad movie. Doctor says this is what happened to Tyler, and we don't know what's going to happen to him, and he's in a coma. Thank you for coming to the hospital. It's like that's what they had to sit with, and so um, we can get more into that, but they certainly have a lot to share in their story on their side of things
Yeah.
about
Yeah. And
that.
I did want to recognize that you're potentially speaking on someone else's behalf or of their experience. But I'm wondering in the aftermath, the days, weeks, months, and years now, have you all as a group kind of circled back to that and just talked through what those moments were like for them?
Yeah, we definitely have hashed it out over the years. Fortunately, so to maybe kind of add some more context to it of not being married. So my wife and I, we were engaged, which means a lot to us. We weren't living together or anything. So there was this kind of clear line in our eyes where it was like I'm a part of kind of my parents' family. And then when I get married, we become a family and there's kind of some symbolism there. But when you're engaged, you're kind of in this red area or this gray area of like, well, I make decisions with her, but I also kind of report to them. And so there's kind of some of those things happening. And in the hospital, it was this doctor, and then my parents and my fiance Amy. And the doctor asked them, who's the one point of contact? Like, who is the person that's going to be the tip of the spear that I talk to? And the way they describe it was kind of this critical moment where Amy steps up and says, "That's me. I'll be the one who goes into it." And I think as someone who is unconscious and unaware of that stuff, to then hear that your fiance and now your wife was willing to kind of stand in the gap for you before you said I do, before you said till death do us part, and in sickness and health, and rich and poor. I mean, that moment really sticks out to me and my parents as something that was critically important for setting the tone for the rest of that experience. And throughout it, I think there were some moments where it was, who's the decision maker, and he's unconscious, or he's conscious, but he's not really here. And how do you kind of work through some of that stuff? And I think there were a few moments of stress and strain, but over the years, there's never been hard feelings. And every once in a while, things will kind of pop up and we'll talk about it as a group. And I feel pretty honored that my parents were so engaged and Amy was so engaged, and they kind of let each other play their roles in a time and an experience that no one prepares you for as a young adult or even as a parent, and figuring that stuff out.
Yeah. Oh, I can just say, different experience, but I know that each person really understanding their role in a situation like this. There's, if you don't have that on top of all the hardship that you're navigating, you also have confusion. And especially, I can't even imagine as well with you in a medically. So you came to the hospital, and I mean, it was face on concrete. So were you knocked out? Um, and then they put you in a medically induced coma. I guess how how do they differentiate that? This might be a weird question, but where do you go from like Tyler got knocked out by the pavement to he is now in a medically induced coma?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know the official answer, but here's how I would translate it was my body did something and it shut down basically.
Hmm.
And then it revved back up with the AED and everything like that. They gave me some intentional medication, and then they were putting ice on my body, like all over my body to cool me down. So they were taking intentional actions to put me in this coma. And the thought was that it was going to protect my brain, actually. So my heart fired back up, but there was some stuff with my brain that they were concerned about, because that's kind of the two most, well, I don't want to say most important, but they're two very critical important components of your body. And once they had my heart figured out, they went into the brain preservation mode, because most people in my situation have brain damage. Just like about 50% of out of hospital cardiac arrest survivors have some type of brain damage
And
afterwards.
that's not just from the impact. I would assume that is loss of blood flow as
Correct.
well. Okay.
Oxygen and all that stuff.
Wow.
So
And staying with that experience that your memory is gone for, was have your parents or your now wife informed you of a moment where they grew in confidence that you were going to pull through?
mm, yeah, so the one moment that Amy consistently talks about is so I have this incident, I'm in the rest of the hospital, they're brought to the hospital, they're in the waiting room, they're calling people, and people are coming, and people are praying, and people are bringing food, and it's like this whole kind of conglomeration of people knowing is growing. And she's having these consults with the doctor every so often, telling him what's going to happen. So they told her, hey, we're put him in this coma and we don't really know when he's going to wake up. I don't know what the protocol is for me to come back, but there's kind of a natural way to do it. And they said, like, it's going to be 24 hours, like at least at a minimum. Um, and then by the end of the night, I was awake and I was alert, and I was like talking and aware of things, from like, at least they could see I was aware. And that was kind of the first time that I think she was like, okay, like there's something happening here with him, with God, with all this stuff happening, where it's not going to be one of those normal experiences. And she was very encouraged by the fact that I was able to come out of it. And one of the doctors, before I woke up, kind of said something like, he's in there and he's fighting. And just that like little word about it, some of those little things, and then to see me kind of come out of it, I think gave them a lot of confidence in who I was. And then as I grew more conscious and more aware, I kind of came into the room as this happy-go-lucky guy, and really kind of bringing the glue together, which is kind of a normal thing for me to do, whether it's at work or at home. And I think that really brought all the confidence that they needed, and has really kind of catapulted us forward from that point on.
Wow. Um, so sticking, kind of concluding this memory sort of thread, what did you fade back into conscious? consciousness, or do you distinctly remember a moment where it's like, oh, I can reflect back and mark that as the moment I came back?
It's a little bit of both. So sometimes if I'll see photos or people will be talking, there's like one situation with my cousin that I really, really, really love that he came and saw me, and I like remember him kind of giving me a hug. And then I remember signing some paperwork, which was kind of an odd thing because I was awake and conscious. So I was the one to sign the paperwork versus someone else doing it. So there was kind of an incident there that I remember signing paperwork, but being super confused as to like what I was doing. And then I remember I was actually transferred from one hospital to another. I remember taking this hospital or this ambulance ride. It was kind of a far ride. And then the next morning I was like normal. So I feel like for 2 days, there's kind of these like interesting, odd memories. And then on like the third day, I woke up and I was like, okay, I know everything that happened to me. I am aware of all the stuff that we kind of just did. And I'm like ready to go forward. And it was just this weird, I don't even know if you call it an experience or situation where all of a sudden I kind of was there and ready to go and was looking forward to whatever was next for us.
I don't intend to make something out of maybe nothing, but have you ever thought it interesting that what appears to be your first memory was that a moment that involved human contact?
Mm, never thought about that before at all.
Yeah. Hmm. I mean, I assume that you had other moments where people were holding your hand or had some point of contact with you, but that just man, I don't know, just our experience and just the road that we've traveled, the power of human connection and physical touch has been something I just don't overlook
Hmm.
anymore. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting. I honestly I just kind of love that I'm like envisioning you sort of coming to. I know you're probably in and out, but just sort of coming to like back to yourself in an embrace. It's kind of a
Hmm.
beautiful image.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, even reflecting on that right now, I like remember because I remember kind of this my cousin coming and kind of like leaning on me, and we took a photo. So I can like kind of remember someone kind of coming over and kind of giving me this side hug. I was in a hospital bed, but I didn't really know what it was. And then months later, I saw the photo, and I was like, "Oh, that's what that was."
Mm,
So it's
wow.
interesting to kind of piece that stuff together, and I think that's something to reflect on for me and for the listener.
Hmm. Wow, that's incredible. You have mentioned a few times the role that faith played, both it sounds like leading up to, during the event and after. I'm curious to know. I kind of want to say in within those, especially first few days. And again, I recognize you'll have to kind of extract from conversations you've had, but how did faith play a role with your now wife, with your parents, loved ones, and yourself?
Definitely. So, yeah, I don't want to make it a mystery for the listener, but I'm a Christian, and I've been one probably since I grew up Christian, but I really think when I was around 23, I was like, okay, I actually really believe this and I want to commit myself to it and kind of going wholeheartedly. So maybe 7 or 8 years of being really all into it. My wife is similar, but I would say she's been more committed, like longer, I would say. But the experience that I have through her and through them was the first call my parents made was to one of their friends from church, and they literally stopped the service at church, like stopped the service and said a Lutheran church in a small town in Minnesota, and they just began to pray for me. And over the last, several years and months afterward, it was people were saying, "Hey, I was praying for you." Like, "Hey, when I got that text, I dropped to my knees and like we were praying for you." And so, as someone who believes in the power of prayer, I mean that's the best thing that someone can do in a situation like that, where you can't physically go help, you can't do X, Y, and Z. You can always stop and pray and intercede for somebody. So that was a big deal, I think, for everybody in that room and everyone sitting there in those hospital chairs was praying and texting and praying and texting all that type of stuff to different people. So that was kind of the base layer of the faith impact. And then I think a more specific story would just be when Amy was kind of receiving some of that news. We had, unfortunately, and just a couple months before my incident happened, we had a friend who had gotten married, but his wife passed away like 2 weeks after they got married. Like one of these just really hard situations. And seeing him walk through it with his faith, like so boldly, so strongly, being so unwavering in what he believed and what he stood on, I think gave confidence to Amy in that same situation. And so she had similar thoughts about like, we might not even get married and like he might die, but God, like, you're greater than all of this stuff. And I can stand on that truth regardless of whatever's happening in my life. And so that was really powerful, specifically for her in that moment, and something that I even look back on and was just like, as a believer, as a Christian, it's like you're all in. Like you can't be in, halfway out. And so to me, that's what all in looks like: is when the whole world is crumbling around you, you know that you're good because you're standing on something firm. And that story to me is really all about her, and then or her faith. And I think in general, just the principles, biblical principles, spiritual principles on resiliency and adversity and how to use this stuff for good and for growth that was just littered all the way throughout every experience, alongside some really interesting um, quote unquote coincidences that we experienced along the way. So it was really kind of enveloped in a lot of our faith practices and what we believe to be God really working in all of these situations.
Could you get into some of those coincidences?
Yeah. Well, the big one is my race bib. So that's the one that you'll see online. If you're listening and you want to search Tyler Moon running, you're going to see a lot of like crazy headlines that are like a little bit clickbaity, which you might know, Kyle. It's like, oh man, this man is a prophet. And I'm like, there's some crazy stuff out there. But really, my race bib is the big one. So when you ever do a race, for those that don't know, is like a more official race, I would say. Usually you get a race bib, and that race bib has some like tracking information on it, and it helps to catch your times, and it also kind of gives you a chance to put your name on your race bib so that people, if they see it, they can say like, hey, good job, Tyler, keep running, or good job, whatever, keep running. And if you're on like a corporate team or something, you might put your company's name, or if you're running for someone who's passed away, you might put their name on it. So it's kind of this way to personalize your race alongside a very practical way to get your times. For me, I had my name, Tyler Moon, on the race bib for most of the build up to the race. That was kind of what I entered my name with. And then what I can only be described as like a moment from God, like a message from God. I was sitting in my car. I have a very good memory of this. And I was getting right out of it after work. And I just felt like I had this thought that came streaking in that said, hey, you should change your race bib from your name, Tyler Moon, to something about God, something about Jesus, something about just something about me, was what I heard God saying. And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's pretty easy to do. I can do that. So I went downstairs in my room, prayed about it a little bit. And within 10 or 15 minutes, I had a new phrase, and I messaged the phrase off to the race organizers. And then within a week or so, they said, yep, we changed your race bib from your name to this specific phrase. So cool, no big deal. And my whole hope was that I was going to wear it and I could encourage somebody with this phrase, and I could kind of encourage myself. And then at the end of the race, I could post kind of like an Instagram photo of me in the race, and share my faith. And as someone who maybe kind of became more serious about his faith in his 20s, I was like, maybe this is a good way for me to kind of like declare to my social community that like this is important to me. And so that was kind of my hope and my goal. And the phrase was Jesus saves. 2 words. It met the character limit. It felt like it kind of hit on all the notes of kind of the gospel and what that meant in a concise way. So that was the phrase. And I was hoping that I could just post one photo on Instagram and one person would see it and it would just be an encouraging thing. But then this is where it kind of gets a little weird. So sorry, the long build up here to the
That's
coincidence.
what this is for.
Yeah. long podcast answer here. But what happened was, after the race, obviously, when people saw my race bib, they were like, wow, like Jesus saves, Jesus saved him. God from above really saved this kid's life. And that's amazing.
This is
And
like the street people are have you hear
no,
about people?
good clarification. So on the street, no one knew anything about it really, but it was when I got to the hospital, they had to like, derobe me and cut
Yep,
off all my
right.
clothes. And so they gave him this bag of sweaty, bloody, dirty clothes. And as they're going through it, my parents find Jesus Saves. And I think to them, like, even now I get like a little emotional
It's
thinking
chill.
about it,
Yeah.
that like they can experience that moment of like, well, what does this mean? And so internally within our like small circle, that was like kind of a cool deal, this Jesus Saves thing. Um, but then a couple weeks later, I was sharing more openly on Facebook about it and kind of sharing my story. I finally got my little Instagram post that I was hoping for, but it was a lot more
Looked
dramatic
a
than
little
I
different.
than I initially expected. um, as we started to share out more, then like local newspapers started to call and ask questions and kind of get more information on the story, because it's objectively an incredible story, regardless of faith outlook, regardless of some of those beliefs. It's just an amazing story where someone almost dies and a community rallies around him, and now this kid gets to get married. Like every
Mhm.
news station wants that on their station. So as I sent the story out publicly, I started getting some more calls in, and one of the news reporters kind of wanted some information on some of the folks who had saved me. And I said, hey, I can't really give you that, but like I just know one person's name, and his name is Jesse. And she's like, okay, that's fine. I'll just maybe put a footnote in or whatever. But she went and did some crazy journalism stuff. Like she's looking at property records and she's doing this and she's doing that. She's doing all this crazy stuff. And later, what we come to find out through her story is that this guy, Jesse, who was one of the folks who gave me CPR, his legal name is Jesus. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
spelt Jesus.
Wow.
Um,
If you are enjoying this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, or comment on the episode. These seemingly small actions can have far reaching impacts. With that, back to the episode, and thank you.
so she kind of made the tie that like Jesse, Jesus, saved me. And I had this Jesus Saves race bib on. And it kind of almost feels, it's like laughable. It's like, what does that doesn't even make sense. And so that kind of triggered the first of probably many coincidences that happened in the coming weeks and months.
Wow. And I will be honest, me 5+ years ago, I would have been super dismissive about that. What a coincidence. Coincidences happen. But I have come back in my faith as well, and I definitely have questions that I want to talk through. But um, in this scenario, it's just like, why don't you just bask in the beauty and magnificence of this? Like, why do you have to? I look back at how I would have reacted, and it's like, why do you have to be so cynical? Like, yeah, there are coincidences. I also believe there's a grand plan, and I believe there are these modes of communication that can
Hmm.
happen. So why not just receive it?
Right. Right.
And speaking of communication, I have something I want to back up a little bit that led you to putting that on your race bib, because it is something that in conversations with individuals who are really searching and trying to understand their faith journey, which there's a lot in the circles that I'm a part of. I've also gone through this before. You had made mention to God spoke to you. And then subsequently you said, you went down and you prayed on it for 10 minutes before you felt the clarity. Again, I'm stepping myself back into like agnostic, cynical Kyle. What does that mean? And what does that actually look like? Like, how did you hear God speak to you?
Yeah. I love that question, whether it's coming from an agnostic person or even a fellow Christian or whatever it is. That's just a great question, because even as a Christian, it's easy to kind of say the Christiany words and then
Yeah,
be
right,
like, yeah, yeah, the
right.
Lord spoke to me. And how many folks have used that tagline for bad things, So I definitely think um, prayer is weird and it's hard to explain sometimes and like fully grasp. And I think even feeling like you're connected to God or a higher power and understanding what they're saying and all that stuff. And so I'll preface it with um, I felt it in the moment, but I think over time it's felt like that moment's been like validated over and over and over again, that like had to be from God. Like there's no way that I get this thought in this moment. And so For me, I just felt like when I was, as a believer, as a Christian, I think you all have crazy thoughts. You got good thoughts, bad thoughts, things bouncing in and out of your head all the time. And so I think we're supposed to take, Apostle Paul talks about like kind of capturing every thought and then like testing it against like the Spirit of God and taking, if God says, hey, you should eat 100 pounds of chocolate and then like go to bed, I'm like, yo, I'm going to test that spirit. Like that does not make sense. You know what I mean? So I think there is something to be said about someone who's a Christian doesn't just take every thought that gets inside their head and
Hmm.
applies it to their life.
Yeah.
Um, and it'd be wrong for me to say there wasn't like a feeling or just like there was something that's maybe hard to explain that when it came in, I was like, oh, that thought is different. Like that seems different. It seems so outside of anything I was thinking about at that moment. It was so outside of anything that I was even considering. Like, why would I even need to change my race bib? Like, this is worthless information. But it just made me kind of pause. And then I went, okay, like, let's go pray about it. And I think that next step, that additional step of actually sitting and praying. And as for me, it's just speaking out loud to God and saying like, hey, what do you want me to do? Let's talk about it. Let's pray about it. Are you actually saying this? Does this make sense? And if it is make sense, like what words would you even give me? And scripture talks a lot about peace and giving people peace. And there's peace that can come in many different ways, but there's peace that can surpass all understanding. And I find that personally when I'm in prayer, and I can enter prayer in kind of a frustrated state or an angry state or an emotional state, and I can leave it with a peace that I don't even have words to explain. And that to me is a way that I think the Lord speaks to us as believers as he really brings peace to a situation, whether it be a question or something like this. So I went and prayed about it, and I feel like I got a word and I got a sentence, and I tested that sentence against the scripture that Jesus saves is very biblically sound. It's the gospel. It's not offending anybody. It's not rude to anybody. It's just a word. It makes sense. I have peace about it. Let's go forward with it. And so I think that that's kind of the general blueprint that I followed and still follow to today. And then I think too, kind of even the gospel itself, Jesus says, come and see or taste and see and come and see the fruit, which people do. I think as a believer, we're always testing. I'm always looking back at the fruit and looking back at things and saying like, yeah, God says I shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. And like, I don't do it. And like, my life is significantly better. But when I do X, Y, and Z, and when I live with pride and I live with anger and selfishness, all of a sudden my life is not what I think it should be. That even of itself to me promotes the belief that that prayer and that connection time with God and the peace that I receive in those prayer moments are validating themselves over and over and over again. So I think it's kind of a muscle that I've built up over time. And as I reflect on it, the muscle just keeps growing stronger and stronger.
Yeah. And I appreciate you covering that because, I would just call myself new to faith. I was also raised in Minnesota Lutheran churches, and definitely had that as a backbone, and it established the morals. But things such as prayer, and I think people who are advanced or really confident and comfortable in their faith and in their personal relationship with God will say things that are just like, God spoke to me. And it's just like, well, no, hold on. Don't dismiss that. Like, what, I think I know what you mean, but like, I know so many people searching for that. And one thing that I've encountered myself is it is one of those things that you have to let go of. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's instances where you can just like really focus in and feel that connection and communication with God, but more often than not, in my short, I'll say experience, it truly is for me, especially with the addiction in the background. It's about letting go, and it's like, yes, I want this thing, but it's on God's time,
Hmm.
and I can pray for it. I can focus on it. Like I can envision
Hmm.
getting there if it's something objective I'm going for. But I found more than anything, like your story, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just came to me.
Yeah. And I
It's
feel like
crazy.
it's hard to, I think it's hard to speak to really anybody outside of a Christian faith or any faith. It just be like, I can't really, it's just a feeling that I had and I did it and it worked out. And I think it's kind of like when you keep feeling that feeling and seeing the thing work out over and over and over again, it builds just this true belief, and like
Yeah,
it's truth. Like
it is.
this
Yeah, yeah.
happened, I did this, and then this resulted. Um, and I think it's kind of like this challenging thing to promote or share with other people without kind of saying like, you just got to try it. Like I don't know what to tell you. You just got to like experience it. Got to show up. And so I think that that's always kind of a challenge for folks who are very who are just curious or questioning or maybe not willing to just accept that answer. But that's sometimes just the answer that I have. And I always encourage folks that I know not might not make sense, but it's real. It's a real story to me. It's how I live my life. And I would just invite you to come and see and like check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, if I've kind of become comfortable that the expanse and true power and wonder of God does expand beyond our capabilities. Like words are a very limiting factor.
Mhm.
And the two experiences that I have where I really saw God's plan and just I connected with things. I've tried to describe it. I've written it out. I've spoken to it, but I've also recognized this is me trying to put it in a form that is understandable by humans, but I cannot express how unusual of an experience it was. It literally surpasses the bounds of our ability to communicate with language, but this is kind of the best that I can do. And I hope you have that experience because there does become a point where it's like, yeah, no, I get it. Like you can't fully explain, but I get that sensation.
Right. Right. And I think too, if as Christians at least, if you believe that God is all powerful and he's omnipotent and he's all these worthy things, exactly to your point, it's like if I could understand everything that he does and speak out everything that he does as a human, then I would really question if I really think God is omnipotent and all powerful and all
Yep.
see.
Yep.
A whole bunch there that I think that's why people have been, probably been wrestling with a lot of things in scripture for thousands of years, trying to understand it. And I mean, the Bible even tells us you're not going to get it all. And there's going to be
Yep.
things you
There.
can't see, things you can't hear, and we're going to show up in heaven one day and we're going to go, wow, I got like an ounce of that. I didn't see
Yes.
it all.
Yeah.
It's still more than I could ever imagine, but it's definitely a mysterious thing. That is definitely something that folks are interested in today, but it can be hard to grasp.
Yeah. And there was a single sentence that brought me back to a relationship with God, and it was spoken at an AA meeting by a man I'll probably never see again. And he simply said, "I don't want a God I can understand." And that single sentence opened up everything. It permitted me to step into um, trying to work on that relationship. And I'm wondering again. I'm stepping back, but you had said 23 things really changed for you, or you might have made a decision. What happened at 23 that you feel like your trajectory with faith changed?
Yeah, I love that question. It's fun to share it with folks, especially if folks are questioning or wrestling with faith and younger generations too. So for me, I grew up small Lutheran town, great parents, great background, but it was one of those situations where it was like, was I really capturing the faith as my own? And I think I always kind of struggle where it's like, well, when did you really become a Christian? When is that moment, or when did you do that? And so, I think I grew up as someone who was like, I was dunked in the baptism tank at 6 weeks old, and I was just always a Christian kind of a thing. And I certainly was someone who followed the Lord, read my Bible, and tried to do good and stuff. And then when I get to college, it's like, oh, all of those kind of social guardrails, like my parents and curfews and teachers and all those things are now removed. And what's replaced that is not even guardrails, but slides down to things that I probably shouldn't be doing, and things that I wouldn't feel like that would be honoring to the Lord. And so I think I kind of had a season, my freshman year and even my senior year, where I was just like not making great choices and I was not living authentically to the values that I was holding to. And I really realized after I graduated college that the only reason I probably had 2 decent years spiritually was because I had those guardrails back. I had friends that were helpful, and I had professors that were helpful, and I was leading kind of an on-campus ministry. And so I wasn't kind of living this complete double life in a way, but I wasn't really a mature Christian. I wasn't really rooted on anything, but I had the values, I had the morals, similar to kind of what you said of growing up in a really rich kind of moralistic tradition of that kind of faith. Um, and then I moved out after I graduated college. I moved out to a city in South Carolina, and I didn't know anybody. I had a new job. I was kind of like plopped out into the middle of nowhere. And for some reason, I wanted to read the Bible in a year. And I don't know if that was because I kind of ended my senior year making some bad choices or what it was, but I kind of got to this point where I was like, I want to read the Bible in a year, and I have a bunch of time. I don't know anybody out here. Let's just give it a shot. And that was when I was 22 or 23. And that was really the time that I really, removed myself from listening to someone else's sermon and listening to someone else's experience and listening to everybody else's noise and allowing their social barriers to kind of keep me on the right track, and actually digging into it and saying like, yeah, what does this proverb mean? Or how does it apply to my life? Or this story is weird. Like, we need to talk about this, or I should do some of my own digging and do some more research or watch some YouTube videos on it or ask questions of people. And so that 1 year of my life is kind of where I signify to folks that, like, that was the year I really captured the faith as my own. And the way I kind of describe it to folks is, before that point in time, if I saw trash on the ground, I would pick it up because that was just the quote unquote right thing to do. Like, I'm not supposed to litter and you're not supposed to litter and trash is bad and whatever. But after that point in time, it was like I saw trash on the ground and I was like, oh man, God created this earth and I'm someone who's supposed to be a protector and like a preserver of earth. I'm going to pick that trash up and I'm going to love it. And all of a sudden I have a calling and I have a purpose. And it really just shifted my mindset completely, and helped me do a lot of the things that I was already doing, but in a way that was truly honoring to God. So that's kind of the story for me there.
And you had mentioned a deviation, really feeling a deviation from your authentic self, freshman, senior year, and then
Mhm.
you have this year when you're 23. What are some behaviors or like examples of it's like where you saw that deviation happen, and sort of what did it churn up within you?
Yeah. So for me, it was kind of like, I would know enough scripture to say like, well, it doesn't say, it's Bible says you shouldn't get drunk with wine. Like, I'm not really drunk. Like, I'm just kind of on the edge
Mm,
of that, or
negotiating.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing, the barriers of scripture as life, I was kind of seeing how far I could reach to the edge of those things and having some internal dialogue. And so I was kind of doing some of that, kind of doing some of that posturing in my mind, which was always a good sign. And then two, I think, really feeling somewhat embarrassed and afraid and shameful to tell people what I was actually doing. So there was things where it was like, going out or hanging out with certain people or being in certain relationships. And all of a sudden I wasn't really willing to divulge all the information. I wasn't really willing to really be truthful and honest. So I think those two were really clear signs to me that I was trying to extend the boundary as far as possible where I felt comfortable, which inevitably I would always cross the boundary because when you're in those moments, it's like, well, it doesn't, drunk, but okay, I'll have another beer, whatever. Oh, I'll have another one. And then, oh, now I'm hammered and I'm making terrible decisions. Like that is kind of what happened. And then as you would talk about it and debrief with folks, it's like, well, I don't want to tell you everything about me. Whereas now I feel like, kind of reflecting on my life now, not that I'm like one of these open book people, but like with my Christian fellowship and my brothers, I'm like, you can have it all. Like, this is what I've done. This is what I do. This is where I struggle because my identity is in something else and I'm not afraid or ashamed of anything. And like, we can move forward. But those are the two behaviors for sure that kept me, or that revealed to me that I was not on the right track.
Can you dive into that identity piece a little bit? When you say it was with something else, what do you mean versus what? What's the
Yeah,
alternative?
for sure. So identity to me, I think personally is the root of a lot of it's the root of every decision that we make, is where we really find our true value and who we are. As a believer, we're told and we see that our identity is found in Christ. So the fact that he was a God who came and lived as a man and lived this perfect, sinless life and then died for our sins on the cross. And I don't have to do anything, quote unquote, like work my way to receive an identity that is greater than that. I just get to accept it and receive it as a gift of God and a gift of grace, and I get to live it out every day with this identity that I am chosen, I am loved, I am forgiven, I am good enough just because I'm made by God, and I can use that identity to go out and live my life. And with that as base, it's like I'm encouraged to go out and be somebody who wants to share the love of Christ because I have this really strong foundation. I would say the previous version of myself without an identity was kind of like, well, I'm the guy who like makes everybody laugh, or like I'm the
Mm,
guy who like shows up and I'm this guy. I'm just like I've put myself in this box where I'm the person that does X, Y, and Z, and that's just who I am. And it was kind of like I could, well, maybe I want to be somebody else, maybe I'll kind of change my behavior, or maybe I'll do this and that. So I was always kind of shifting my behavior to what got me appreciation, to what got me admiration, to what made people stand up and clap and say I'm such a great guy. And then all of a sudden it started to turn into, well, I kind of just want to do stuff that I want to do. Like I kind of want to, that made me feel good. That was kind of fun. And so my identity was always shifting and changing to whatever made me feel great at that time, whether it was admiration or whether it was, doing certain activities that made me feel good. And there was really no strong foundation to stand on. And so that's kind of how I defer or view those two different things.
this might get flagged as like a leading question, but did you feel physically exhausted during that period of, say, like shifting identity?
I can't speak on the physical side, but I did feel like emotionally and mentally exhausted.
Why would that be?
Well, I think you're just lying to yourself. You're always lying. And I think that's like always, even as a young kid, there's probably plenty of movies or stories on it when you're always lying to folks and you're always going to remember the lie you told that person, the lie you told that person, the lie you told that person. I mean, that's exhausting. That's just completely exhausting. And so I think that's probably something too to like, when you code switch between, well, I'm with like my family and I'm this really good guy. And then I go out on weekends with my boys and I'm this guy, and I'm with the girls, I'm with this guy. And so it's like you're always changing who you are. And I think it was more mentally and emotionally, it was like just exhausting to be the person that everyone else admired, or what I thought they admired, and building my identity on that versus being like, hey, I'm Tyler. I'm like ordinary suburban dad and I'm here for it. Like, let's get after it kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say more of a mental and emotional exhaustion.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. My experience really at the end of my drinking, I had built a whole lie around it. I was hiding it from everybody, and um, that what you're saying. I was lucky I had a remote job, so I would come on screen and hey, I'm happy go lucky, hard worker, everything's going great, and I was crumbling everywhere else, and then I couldn't even show my wife. I couldn't show my family, the side of me that was falling apart. And the yeah, I have not felt so much ability to be present and focused as I have since I've had a similar reframe of identity that you have. And I think that's something that people miss a lot. Like really the one piece of identity that you need is that you are a child of God. You're a son of God, and that that is everything. Everything else you're doing here, and it for me has permitted me to just have incredible gratitude for everything in this world, even the hardships. And so you had kind of going back to your life now, or the build up to October 6th, you said, of 2019, which by the way, I had recently just fled from Minnesota. We moved in 2019 from Minnesota out to Idaho for very valid reasons. But if I'm honest, and I hadn't been at that time, part of it was to run away from the alcoholism. So I'm assuming mile 8 did. Tangent here, but did you collapse on Summit Avenue? Was
Yeah.
that okay? I lived on Summit.
No way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was in a very old, very dilapidated house, renting with a buddy for a good while. But yeah, I'm very very familiar with Summit. So that's just kind of crazy thinking that I just vacated that
Yeah.
that area. But did you spent a year in South Carolina? Did you meet your wife during that time, or where did she come into the picture there?
Yeah, I did not meet her there. I met her when I moved back to the Twin Cities. So I graduated in 2016, moved out there, South Carolina, moved back in about 2017, and then worked in the Twin Cities. And I met her in 2018, which was awesome. Blind date, set up, got coffee, and kind of like the rest is history, kind of a thing.
That's awesome.
And we both have had our own kind of ups and downs with faith and living, and we kind of felt like it was one of those perfect moments where we had, not that you have to have your life figured out before you meet somebody, but it felt like we had both were really mature and satisfied and content with who we were as individuals. And all of a sudden, we kind of came into this relationship unexpectedly, kind of unassumedly, and it's been great ever since.
And now jumping to those moments, you were transitioned down to Mayo, right down in Rochester. What did the experience and path of faith look like for yourself and for the two of you as a couple, as a soon to be married and then newly married couple, from that point forward?
Yeah, so I get transferred down to Mayo, and we have kind of a great experience down there. I will speak the highest praises to the Mayo Clinic and what they can
Yeah.
do and the things that they're able to do. And we spent some time there, about a week there, doing tons of tests. We tested my parents, we tested my brother, we tested me. I was on a treadmill. I was doing all sorts of things trying to figure out what my heart situation was. And every day and every night, Amy was just there. She was on the couch sleeping. She was getting lunch with me. She was doing all the stuff that you would expect a 50-year wife, couple to be doing. She was there, even before our wedding. And in that way, there was just so much opportunity to be together and to sit and to pray and just rejoice that I was alive. And so I think what could have been a really hard start to our marriage actually turned into a really beautiful start, to kind of turn it into just a really fertile soil for growth. And it really did make kind of those next few months leading up to our wedding. There's lots of things to be overwhelmed about when you get married and when you host a bunch of people, but like, really, isn't the most important part your spouse? Like, isn't that
Yes.
what it's really
Yeah.
all about? And
Hmm.
so I think that did really kind of reframe us. Um, and not that we were off the rails beforehand, but it was kind of like, hey, you're live, and that's good. And now we can get married, and that's exciting. And let's just make sure the main thing stays the main thing. So we spent kind of the next few months. I actually couldn't drive for a while because of my heart stuff. So she was driving me around everywhere, and I would spend the night at her place on like an air mattress to like help kind of keep an eye on me and kind of keep me safe and stuff like that. And then I would transition off to my place in a couple of weeks after. And so we kind of had some sweet moments together, kind of figuring life out as an engaged couple. And then we had a great wedding with a really low rejection rate because everyone was like, hey, this dude's alive. We're going to show up to this wedding. Like, whatever the number is that they say, expect
Who
X
Yeah,
amount of
who knew that
rejection.
would have cost you some money at the end
Yes.
outside
Yeah.
of hospital bills?
Right. Right. It was like they're all here and ready to party. And it was a great
Love it.
celebration.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, it was special, and it really was. When they say, "till death do us part," and those kind of words that don't really, they mean something, contractually, but obviously we all fall short with those vows. But to have her say in sickness and health, I'm like, yeah, you've proved that. Like, you've already proven that. I'm not worried about that box. Like, we're good to go. So yeah, it was a great time, and then we've kind of just grown ever since. And to have something so traumatic happen at an early point in your marriage and to be able to work through it, I think really sets a strong foundation for the future. Because maybe in some ways, I think sometimes I'm always kind of comparing back to that of like, we've
Yeah.
gotten through that.
Yeah.
Like, we can get through Christmas, whatever,
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
Like, we can do this.
Yeah.
This is nothing compared to that. And so, yeah, it's been a delight to kind of build with her afterwards.
Yeah. And I recognize it sounds like there was a lot of movement and just activity going on when you were in the hospital, really trying to get to the bottom of things. But just kind of knowing the rhythms of like a longer hospital stay, did you have those sort of quiet downtime moments with your wife where you could really have um, intentional conversation about you you two as a couple and what your life ahead would entail?
Yeah, that's an insightful question. There's not much time in the hospital when you're there for like a week. You think there is, but obviously there are people who want to see you, so you talk to them. There's
Yeah,
doctors and
yeah,
nurses coming in all the time and checking on you, and then even just you wanting to go out and go for a walk. So like, even though I sat there and did nothing all day, we were busy. Somehow we found a way to get busy and hang out with folks. So the two kind of stories I'll share on this one is I did plan a date for us when we were in the hospital at one point in time,
wow,
and I kind
love
of
it.
said like, "Hey, y'all, no one's coming to see us. Like, this is our date night." One of my friends in Rochester got pizza for us, dropped it off, and we sat down across each other from a hospital kind of moving table thing, and we just had
Yeah.
dinner. It was, yeah, it was kind of one of those, yeah, just one of those beautiful moments that it was like, this is so kind of weird and janky and odd, but it was really special. And so
Yeah,
that was one of those moments where we just sat and we didn't talk much about the future in the sense of like what it looked like for us at that moment. That one was more just like, let's have a date. Let's like talk about funny stories and let's make jokes and do whatever. And that really felt like we were back, quote unquote, back to just dating again and being
yeah,
engaged.
yeah,
But the other time I would say we had a more serious conversation about the future was, um, it was in later November. We were headed out to go to a birthday party, and I had just had my defibrillator surgery. So I had my collapse, and then about a month later, I had my defibrillator surgery where they put in this device and all that stuff. And on our way to this birthday party, I was having some chest pain, and that was obviously like a concerning. Whenever I say I'm in pain with my chest, everyone's like, oh gosh, oh gosh, what does that mean? And what it ended up being was really nothing. But we went to the hospital and we saw somebody, and I actually ended up spending the whole night at this hospital because they ran all these tests on me out of like major precaution, just to make sure that maybe the cardiac arrest was actually something different and it was leading to something else. And so
my
I sat in
gosh.
the hospital for 12 hours and they did all these tests and came back and said, nothing wrong with you. We don't know if it's just from surgery or if it's just how you're feeling that day or whatever it is. But I remember in the hospital triage room as we're getting in there, I just started to cry. And I was just thinking that, like, is this going to be my life? Am I just going to be in and out of hospitals? Am I going to be always sick or always hurt? Or is my heart going to kind of take me out in some way or another? And this was before we got married. And I told Amy, I was like, If you want to jump, you can jump because I care for you more than like allowing you to be locked in with me forever and I'm like some disaster. And she was just like, you got to cut that out. Like, that is the word. She was very quick to say, like, in a very loving way that, like, no, like, this is not what it's about. I'm here for you through all things. And I don't think I didn't know how much I needed to hear that at that moment. She obviously showed it throughout the month of October and into November. And it was very clear that she wanted to be with me. But then in November, when I'm kind of at my low point and crying in a triage room because my chest hurts, she's like, "That's fine. I'll be here. Like, no big deal." And that was really one of the moments that solidified. I mean, a lot of things, but that was a critical moment for us as we were starting our marriage.
And yeah, to have a partner, or I'll call her a spouse in this instance, even though it's a month or two advanced, having those moments that you see them step forward, um, it is kind of back to our conversation about hearing from God. Like, it's really hard to put into words,
Mhm.
just what that can do to a person. My wife and I were very. I've outright asked her like why she stuck with me through the alcoholism. Um, and it's like just a absolute refusal. It was glimpses of seeing, of knowing who my authentic self was, and then getting glimpses of that, and just the hope and the faith that it would come back full time. But we had really intentional conversation after losing our daughter, and we sat down and we looked at each other and said, are we going to put our marriage first? Are we going to work through this and get through this together? And it was just a resounding yes. And I think we just were lucky enough in that moment to recognize the hardship, and to a point you made earlier, to be honest about it, because I think where people fall short is internalizing and sort of just assuming that you're going to make through it. And we made a verbal pledge to each other. And it was something we come back to, because I'm sure, in your scenario, like, have there been hard moments? Has it been all flowers and roses since that time, or have you navigated difficulties in your relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're just like any normal married couple, I would say, pretty much on that. Um, and I think the whole heart thing kind of sets a new foundation, but we're always just a normal two broken people trying to build a strong family together. And so I think, to your point about saying a verbal pledge or having those moments, even Bible scripture talks a lot about reminding yourself over and over again, writing things on your doorpost and writing them on your forehead, and kind of these declarations that you need to remember this stuff. Like, these things are important, and that's talking about God and what He's done in your life. But I think it's critically important that even as couples, or it's friends or family, or marriages, that you like remind yourself about the covenants that you've made, the vows you've made, whether they've been formal at a wedding platform or informal at a coffee shop or a dinner. And that's one thing that we try to do every year on our anniversary, is watch our wedding video and watch just the ceremony, the whole thing, start to finish. So we've been there, we've seen it a bunch of times, we still love it. But every time I see those vows being made, it's like, okay, that's the reminder that's important for me to know that, like, I committed to her, and more importantly, I committed to God that I was going to take care of her and all these different things. And so, yeah, we're just like a normal married couple, but we definitely rely and lean on some of those statements we've made in the past to help propel us forward in times of challenge and change.
That's beautiful. So after um after November, December of 19, when did living proof leadership and the book
Yeah.
come into play? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So we get married in January of 2020. So 3 months after I
Big party.
collapsed. Yes, and partied, had a great party, live band. It was great. Had a blast. Went to Cabo, came back, and COVID happened. So that was like that whole thing.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
thing.
remember that thing?
Yeah.
And I kind of had some of those, kind of a similar moment of like, I just feel like the Lord was really speaking to me about continuing to run and starting to speak and do all these things, kind of share the story. I kind of think about, like, there's lots of metaphors about light and stuff like that in scripture, and a city on a hill and it shines bright for all to see. And some of these metaphors about, being a true follower, a Christian, and what that means. And I felt like I had this great story, and I always had this light, and I wanted to really share it with as many folks as possible. And I just felt like every time I would pray, I would just see myself running. I have this vivid image of me running, and me running. And as much as I didn't want to have to tell Amy, like, hey, I think I should run a marathon, I like knew I had to tell her, because I was just dying inside. Like, I couldn't
Honesty,
like,
man.
I
Yeah.
couldn't process. I was just like, man, like, I really feel like the Lord wants me to run a marathon, but I know I just had surgery. I know I almost just died. Like, how is this going to go? And really, that was kind of I would say, the unofficial start of Living Proof Leadership. We called it by a different name at that point in time. But it was kind of just the start of using our story for good. It was no longer a story that was just something that happened to us, but we wanted to use it as a platform and a ministry, or even a business, to help kind of propel this word forward of encouragement, of resilience, of opportunity when we face hardship. And so it kind of unofficially started there. And in 2020, I ran a marathon. In 2021, I ran a 10-mile again, with Jesse Bueno. So Jesus, he and I ran it
Get
together.
out of here.
Yes,
That's
yes, that was cool.
amazing.
And every time I would run, it would just be, I would just, message my news reporter friends, hey, I'm doing this thing. And they're like, oh, we're going to be there. We're going to be there for sure. And so,
Amazing.
I really experienced the power of a platform there. And you got cameras in your face and microphones. And it's, well, what am I going to say to the world? Whether it's, small town Minnesota, or whether it's the metro, or whether it's the whole nation, what would I actually say to them? And that was some good opportunities for me to share why we're doing it and why it's important to us. And I wanted to, really share a message of resilience, in the face of Christ, and that, like, I'm resilient here. I can do all these things because of Christ who's in me. And in doing that, it kind of led to some doors of speaking and, doing little events here and there, and mostly free things, and for Bible studies and fellowship of Christian athletes, all these sorts of different things. And we got a couple years into it, And we kind of realized that I actually have like a decent gift for speaking, which is somewhat of a surprise. Like I was not like the public speaker type. And once we started to see the benefit of it, and I was good at it, and I was speaking more and more, and people seemed to really enjoy it, we kind of made it more of a formal thing, and we called it Living Proof Leadership, which is kind of a play on the fact that I'm alive, that I didn't die,
Hmm.
and I think I'm living proof. I hope that I'm always living proof of the principles that I teach people, whether it's scripture based or more, science based, secular based type thing. So nowadays, I speak to because kind of my two audiences. I have a lot of speeches for faith based communities and a lot of speeches for business communities, all kind of focused on resiliency and taking any adversity and turning it into opportunity. And as you mentioned, I just released a book, and this is the first time I've shown it on camera here. So this is a book
Love
that
it.
we've got here, and it's a really short, kind of almost a devotional type book. And it's really kind of my best speeches from the faith based approach. And it's 10 chapters long, detailing a little bit of the story that we just talked about from my perspective, and then peppering in a few other biblical teachings on resilience, on adversity, where it comes from, how to overcome it, how to find purpose in the midst of your pain is kind of the tagline I like to tell people too. So, yeah, it's been really fun, and it's been. I really had just got these books this week, and I'm sending them out to people this month, and I'm excited to kind of get them out in folks' hands and see what impacts them, how it
Yeah.
blesses them.
How does it feel to have something tangible like a book that I mean, just literally the story you've laid out kind of leading to that? Is the physical feel of it in your hand something you anticipated or expected, or what, or was it just like, oh, it's another book?
Yeah. It's kind of, I think we kind of get on this theme of indescribable feelings. Like it feels like one of those things where, I mean, I look at it and I'm like, I can't believe like this is my name. Like my name's here. Like
Yeah, yeah.
this isn't a misprint. And I've seen the cover, hundreds of times, and I've seen these words hundreds of times, and I've looked at them and proofread them and created them on spreadsheets and PowerPoints and all sorts of stuff. And so to actually see it has been really cool. But what's been even better is handing it out, going to
Yeah.
somebody and saying, like, here you go. Like, you bought it, which is a gift in and of itself. You actually paid money for this book, but now I get to like, give you some of my thoughts on X, Y, and Z. And I'm a son of a teacher, and even though I work in corporate, I have a real passion for teaching. And I don't think there's really anything that's more deeply rooted in somebody than getting a good teaching from a teacher or a coach or a parent. And I find that to be able to be kind of penciling myself as a teacher or someone who is able to impact people for years and decades to come, and maybe they might teach a few things that I've taught them to their kids and their grandkids. I mean, that to me is legacy. And that's what I feel like the book really shouts to me is legacy, and imparting some true values into folks, whether it's inside of my home, which is critically important, and now outside of my home.
It's amazing. What pushed you to finally sit down in front of a computer the first time?
Great question. So I was speaking I was on paternity leave, so I had some extended time off when our son was born, and I was certainly doing stuff with him, but my wife was also off of work, and I got a chance to speak at a local college here in the Twin Cities at their athletics chapel. So it's a Christian college, and they have chapel every week, and I said, I'm going to come speak. And I want to do 3 weeks in a row because I kind of have these three speeches that I'd love to do them all at once, but it's way too long for one crowd to kind of sit through. But so I kind of had this content lined up, and I was really excited to just go do it. And I went, and every week it was, positive feedback, and people were interested, and students generally seemed to appreciate it. And I always had questions, and we always broke out into groups. And so I kind of got to the end of that, and I was like, man, this is book worthy to me. I don't know what it was, but it just felt like there was enough content to make it worth my while. And then obviously having AI, like I feel like I almost should say like co-authored, because it was like I definitely used AI. I definitely had it kind of create the initial drafts for me. And once I kind of figured out, okay, if I use all the content I have and I use some AI help, oh my gosh, like this is a really good start. Like all of a
Mhm,
sudden, that first kind of initial, I don't got no time, I don't have any
mhm.
money, all that stuff was removed, and I was able to kind of get stuff on paper. And then once I got it on paper, it was slowly iterating it, making it better, and then shopping it around to some kind of self-publishing companies and saying, "What do you think? Is it decent?" And going from there and getting their takes on it, and then they obviously shred it up and edit it a
Oh, yeah.
lot and
Yeah,
take
yeah.
things out. So, but yeah, it was really kind of like a moment after those teachings or those different three speaking events that I said, this is worth it, and I might as well try with the AI stuff and see where it goes. And to just see it on even on a Word document, kind of go, yeah, that's like pretty close to what I wanted to say. Like, yeah, that's like pretty good. Let's dig into it. It made it more realistic and kind of gave me a taste of what it could be. And now we sit 18 months later with a book in hand, going, man, this is pretty cool.
Amazing. What was your wife's reaction when you told her the first time?
I think she maybe said something like, how much is this going to cost?
Yeah. That is
and
wise. Just
Yes, yeah, 'cause I'm an ideas guy, and I
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
come with her with, like, "Hey, we should buy an airplane," and she's like,
Yeah.
"What?" Like, I'm like, I got a great idea." But I think she was very much like, "Let's talk about the cost," but what was also nice with, using AI and, using the content that I already had was, like, it was all free, there was no harm in me building out this thing, and if you ended up going, "It doesn't feel right," or "I don't feel
Mhm.
good about it," you just scrap it, and maybe you lost some time, but I learned a bunch about AI, which is certainly a popular topic. So it felt like she was really supportive. She was always, supportive of me kind of trying it. And then once we started talking dollars and cents, it got a little bit more real and like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. And I don't think we'll ever actually make money off of the said book. But it's been a great platform to share and helps to do speaking engagements and just bring impact into the world in a way that I think is really important.
So you had mentioned it's a devotional. The way you structured or wrote it, is it something you intend for somebody to get into like certain time of day, only a little bit of consumption per day, or how is it built out?
Yeah, so it's 10 chapters. It's 80 pages with 10 chapters, and there's a whole appendix with some different biblical teachings on it. But really, each chapter is less than 10 pages. It's like 5 to 7 pages a piece. And I would encourage people to take it slowly. Like I would read like a chapter a week. And if you were in a group or you have a spouse who's interested in it as well, I would say read it and just discuss what you think. I'm in a men's group, and we kind of go through things really slowly, but we spend lots of time discussing. And I think that that's a similar type of thing with this book, where you could read it all the way through, and you could read it in like a weekend very easily. But I don't know if you get like the richness of it and to kind of sit in it, because we do tackle some topics of like why is sin in the world?
Yeah,
Why
right.
do good thing or bad things happen to good people?
Hmm.
There's a topic on that, and my hope and my prayer is that people will read it and just sit with it and go, okay, what does that mean? Let me call
Hmm.
somebody. Let me talk to somebody. Let me dig into this. And that's the whole point of having discussion questions. And at the end of each chapter, there's even just space for personal reflection to write out words or thoughts or
Awesome.
draw a picture or whatever it is that you feel like makes sense. And kind of going back to my teaching desires of saying, I want you to learn. I want you to kind of like take a concept and grasp it and then take it in your life and make it better and build it to
Hmm.
yourself and build it uniquely for what you need in your life. So that's kind of the hope for folks who are reading that book.
Yeah, and I love how it ties a fair amount of what we've talked about together here, because to me it does feel like something where it's like you have moments as an individual to go through it, to sort of plant the seed, start sitting in some of these questions, maybe hear or have a connection with God, right? And um I from the very start of my journey, when I heard that sentence spoken, and I was like, all right, I feel permission to step into a relationship with God, I was very adamant, like, this is going to be a me and God thing. Like, this is about a personal relationship. I don't want to go and consume somebody else's perspective to just blindly accept another human's point of view or interpretation. And so I really worked on that individual component. But then what I have discovered as I have continued on that path is the enrichment, the challenge that does come in when you take some of these really big, complicated problems that twist us up as human beings and our limited capacity of perception and thinking and seeing, and bringing it together as a group. I really love that idea, and it sounds just like a beautiful structure. Is that from the very get-go, is that what you were intending with it? Or was there a point along your writing process where you're like, oh, this is actually the flavor of what I want to get, or to teach and pass along to others?
Yeah, I mean that's a insightful question. So really, when I went to the first kind of initial thoughts on the story, I was thinking about in two ways. One is a teaching book, like what I've created here, where it's short, it's concise, it gives you enough to do your own research and dig in with a small group maybe. And then the other one is like a novel, where it's like I tell you every detail of my story, and then Amy tells you a chapter of her details, and so forth and back and forth. And that novel book might get written one day, but that took a lot more time and money and energy that we were
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
putting into.
Yeah.
And so I think as I was getting into it, really kind of like practically, it was like, well, I have a lot of content that is teachable. And it's really, my hope is that, it's funny that you're in Idaho right now, because I would tell people that I know I can't go everywhere. Like I'm a finite human in a finite space, and I got kids, and I have a wife that I want to be with, and I can't fly around the country sharing all this stuff. But I just hope that there's some kid in Idaho, and I would tell people Idaho or Wyoming, I hope there's some kid in Idaho that needs to hear this message, and he can read it in a weekend, or he can kind of get that information. So as I was talking to folks and meeting with some good publishing partners, a lot of good partners would say, well, why do you want to write it? And what's important to you? What are your values? And as I had those conversations, it became very clear that the teaching book was the first entry point from a financial standpoint, from a content standpoint, and the novel might come later. If there's a big Hollywood exec looking for a story or something,
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
we can work on that. Um, but that really was kind of the process there. And then throughout the editing process, editors do a really good job of cleaning it up and asking you questions like, have you thought about this? Or have you kind of considered this? Or, why do you have this title here and this title here? And what about the subtitles? And in that whole process, that chaotic spaghetti mess of editing, it became clear that it was really a teaching book with time for personal and kind of maybe group reflection. And it became very clear that the elements were supposed to be what they were supposed to be. And so we've done things like the chapter headers. So um, the book is called More Than a Conqueror, based off of Romans 8:37, where it says we're more than conquerors through Christ, who saves us. But all the chapter titles are based off of like running things and running ideas. So
Amazing.
chapter 2 is Headwinds and Hills, and chapter 4 is Finding Our Stride. Chapter 7 is God's Training Plan. So it's just little things like that I feel like over the course of the book, when I first started, it was like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. There was
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
titles, no
Yeah.
subtitles,
Yeah.
nothing like that. So a little bit of taking the heart of the situation and fleshing it out over months and months and months, and finding the what I perceive to be the right start as we get into the authorship.
Do you feel like going through the process of writing everything out, did it help you, even the parts that didn't end up in the book, did it help you sort of like frame up everything? Because a lot happened in your life over I mean, so much changed in an instant. Did you find that to be a healthy part of the process of just going back to the identity piece, like really grounding yourself in that identity and figuring out, just what had happened and transpired in your life?
Right. That's a great question. I think it would have if I hadn't spoken a lot before.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really think what has helped me a lot is podcasts like this.
Mhm.
But I've been doing podcasts for a number of years now, and I just started going on them just because I wanted to talk about it and I wanted to share the story. I had nothing to sell. I had nothing to really, it wasn't anything too crazy. It was just I wanted to talk about it. And I think having these real conversations where, you're a great interviewer, you ask good questions, and you kind of push me to even expand my own understanding has truly helped me grasp the concepts better. And then I've kind of taken my podcasting conversations and put those into speaking presentations. And those presentations are more formal, and I get to kind of drive the conversation the way I want to. But I think kind of doing the podcasting and then doing the speaking, um, has really kind of almost made the book easy in a way to say like, I got it all. I want to just spew it all out. Let's just go. I do find if we do a novel type story in the future, I wonder if there'll be more to uncover there where it's digging into stories and really trying to see kind of what my family thinks and some of those kind of tougher concepts. But for this one, it was more fleshed out through speaking and podcasting.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I would definitely encourage you um to take the time at some point to write it out. I mean, I took the opposite approach where I dove headfirst into that novel, and my word is it becoming a novel. Um but I mean, in terms of healing, recognizing moments of growth that maybe I would have overlooked, seeing the learnings and really forming them within me. And one thing that I feel like is more recent is like that identity piece, and really starting to understand, through the arc of this story, um, in just what I've written, but also the parts that again don't get in there. Like, how am I really forming my identity around that
Mhm.
Son of God concept versus all the other things that come in, right? And it's beneficial. I mean, I have encouraged a lot of people to just write. Even if they feel like I love how you said that you're just an ordinary guy. My book oscillates between ordinary and obsessive. It's the first two chapters. The first
Mhm.
one is just how plain Jane ordinary that I am, and the other was the obsessive pursuits that I
Mhm.
had. And then using that structure, it just kind of like carries forward. Um, and that was always one of my limiting beliefs, was like, well, I can't do this because, XYZ. And it's just like, I think working through these challenges, I believe you taking and picking up this responsibility that you have, like, in making it through your story and carrying that message forward. Um, that's powerful. And,
Mhm.
does it feel like you even have much of a choice at this point?
That's a great question. I just don't think I've ever thought about not telling it. It's like when you go to a good restaurant, you're
Hmm.
like, "Oh man, have you been to this restaurant? Like,
Yeah.
I got to tell you about it." I
Yeah.
kind of feel like the same thing with my story, and obviously, I really like Francis Chan as an author and a pastor, and he's kind of famous pastor, and he talks a lot about how when he's on stage and he has the lights on him, that it's like poison to his skin, like that it's actually turning him into this prideful person, and he doesn't really want to do it, but that is kind of like what his giftings are, and it's what he's been called to do. And I sometimes feel that same tension of like, oh man, like I'm going to travel to do this thing and I'm going to do this thing and I'm on stage, and it's almost going back to that 21-year-old Tyler, that 22-year-old Tyler that always wanted that admiration. It's like, well, now I have it, and I don't want to like take it and spin it the wrong way. But I think what's grounded me is my faith and my identity, truly kind of unlocks or locks out some of those bad behaviors. But I think what's great about this story is I went for a run and I collapsed. That's the story. Like that's kind of the initial thing, and I could take no pride in that. That was just what happened. It just everyone else did something amazing, and that's why I'm alive today. And now I get to go and do things today. But really, the reality is, I was kind of the problem in the story. I was the person that caused all the issues to begin with, and now I'm able to kind of take it and bring it forward and to really use it for good. And it's been really special to kind of be the torchbearer of this story. And as I talk about it in my book, I hope that my son will read it one day, and then he'll read it to his kids one day, and so on and so forth, and that they can look back on their family line and say like, "Oh man, like great grandpa, like he really believed in Jesus. Like, what does that mean to me? What does that mean for my life? What do these teachings really mean to us?" And I hope that really is what sinks in with folks as we move forward in the coming years and decades.
Man. Well, Tyler, you are an incredible person doing really amazing work. This has just been enjoyable. Again, our mutual friend gave me a heads up. He's like, you two are very similar. I think you're going to have a lot in common. Like your cadence and dynamics are pretty on point. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy each other. Where can people find out more about you? Find your book find a way to book you for speaking engagement or anything else?
Yeah, livingproofleadership.com. So we got that domain name. We feel pretty good about that. And hop on there. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's links to contact us, and there's also a link to purchase the book. I made like a little discount code for More Than Capable. So if you put in the letters MTC when you check out, you'll get a little discount, and I'll
Amazing.
make sure to ship out that book too. Hopefully, there's some kid in Idaho. That would be
Yeah.
like a God
You'll
given
you'll
thing.
have you'll have one address, from
Okay.
Idaho come through, so you're
Yeah.
you're you're golden there.
Yeah.
I love that that is just what you envisioned with it.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
There's a fair amount of us here. It's
Good.
becoming pretty popular. Yeah.
Good.
It's a good market out here.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to come to Boise. I'd love to come speak and all that stuff. And
Love
that
it.
truly is one of the gifts of being able to speak and do stuff like this. Meeting you and
Mhm,
being able to build a relationship with folks over time is truly one of the best gifts of doing what I do. And this is completely a side hustle. So
mhm.
it's been really fun to jump into that. And I hope people are, as a listener, you're blessed from the story and can use it for whatever adversity you might be facing.
Amazing. Thank you, Tyler, very much.
Thank you.